Hey, welcome back to Stories in AI. This week, I'm booting back Stories in AI and my podcast series. And while we ramp up our new guest discussions, what I wanted to do was start a new mini series called the Weekly Top 5 Stories in AI. So let's get started. Number one, the 5 stories this week. Number one, OpenAI launches GPT 4.5. And Sam Altman tweeted it yesterday and said internally it's known as Orion, and it boasts additional and improved conversational abilities. It's available for the $200 an hour a month ChatGPT Pro users. Will be rolling out to the other users very shortly. And it's interesting. It's like, he very clearly notes that it doesn't do a lot of reasoning like the other models do, the O1, O3 series do. And it lags behind reasoning focused models and all the benchmarks, but it's a milestone towards, conversational AI. And I tested it this AM and it is pretty cool. And I had a long conversation with it. I was designing my workout for me this morning. At some point you forget that you're not talking to a human being. It is freaking cool. Now, 2 other standpoints on this one. It is a very, very expensive model. I think something to the effect of $500 billion being spent on all these models, hosting and delivering it. So there's a lot of critiques arguing that, is this the right use of dollars to further the ambitions of what AGI or AI needs to be? But I do think there is a interesting element here. The conversational medium is still the way humans communicate most of the time. And, especially when you're trying to bring AI and other embodiments like chatbots or mobile apps or even humanoid robots, this kind of almost natural human conversational abilities will change the experience from being an okay one to an amazing one. All right. Number 2, coming down to the second point, which kind of beautifully dovetails to how expensive it is to run the GPT 4.5, is Nvidia reports their Q4 earnings. And guess what? They reported a $39.3 billion revenue in the fourth quarter, representing a 78% increase year over year. And the stock definitely still, got a bump, and there was some volatility because of the tariffs and export restrictions and stuff that affecting sales to China. But they also gave a very optimistic $43 billion forecast. So again, more growth in this coming quarter. It's amazing how the conversations changed over the last few weeks, saying with DeepSeek's R1 model, do you need these expensive GPUs to further the market and stuff? And this was squarely, I think there was an announcement that there was $1 billion of infrastructure being bought by Elon Musk's X to support the AI model, the Grok 3, which I'll talk about in my next point. But it goes to show AI is hungry as ever. And I think it'll definitely lead to changes and improvements in the models. And, there is place for smaller models, more efficient models, and all of that stuff. But the big debate, the big discussion that needs to happen, and I'm sure it's already happening, is how does this change the power infrastructure dynamics in the United States and all over the world, right? Energy production. We've been, I was listening to the All In podcast from a few weeks ago, and there was this chart that Friedman showed on how the energy production in the United States, net new energy producers are like sites and new reactors and stuff like that. It almost fell off when the outsourcing wave started, or globalization wave started. So there's a lot of catching up to do if we have to continue to be a leader in AI in the United States. Okay. Number 3, Grok 3, Elon Musk's X.com based model, XAI model, sparks controversy with its unfiltered behavior. Now, I don't know whether you saw some of those tweets around it. It's been making headlines for unhinged responses. Users describe as being, as blunt or inappropriate, and the And while on the one hand, Elon Musk is touting Grok 3's advanced reasoning capabilities and unique personality traits and the focus of being a truth model or truth seeker model, critics argue that the lack of guardrails can raise a lot of ethical concerns when people start using this as an API in several applications. But something to ponder or think about is, what does unhinged behavior, unfiltered behavior really mean? If you guys don't remember, I think that was last week that there was a audio clip of Jamie Dimon in All Hands, CEO of JP Morgan, talking about how we've just become a software culture and things like that. There's all this political movement that happened in over the last last couple of years in the United States with the new government. There is the whole notion of being politically correct and being politically non-threatening to people and other things, the sanitized, sensitive, politically correct world. And then now you have AI, who you have to think about AI as a part of your ecosystem now. It's a non-human form of intelligence. And the question is, two questions. One is, are we really so afraid of offensive language that we're going to offend people and things like that? And is that a trade-off for getting genuine, true AI capabilities? Because if you really, constrain these models to do things, one may argue that it constrains their ability to think, in a nonlinear fashion, think like everybody wants you to think. So trying to solve new problems that hasn't been solved before. There is so much of potential that could be wasted because you try to hinge the model or make it put those guardrails in place. And the larger question, again, being who decides what are the right guardrails? I mean, what is, who's ethical? When we say the model needs to be ethical, which ethical principles, whose ethics principles, and so forth. So this has been a hot topic for a long time. It is also a time for me to make a plug to my South by Southwest event at, I think, the Healthcare Innovation Day on March 7th in Austin, Texas. I'm hosting a panel discussion with Dr. Pritesh Gandhi, who was the previous Chief Medical Officer of the Department of Homeland Security, and Nasim Afshar, who was until recently the Chief Health Officer of Oracle Cerner. And we're going to debate and discuss how the changing landscape in the regulatory or the deregulation, as well as the US policy around things like AI, how is that going to affect innovation in healthcare, positively or negatively? Meta and Cisco drive AI innovation through major investments. Now, Meta announced that there was a $65 billion AI infrastructure investment in 2025, including a new data center in Louisiana. And Cisco revealed that they plan to actually integrating AI into their WebEx suite or family of products, aiming to increase productivity, real-time collaboration, transcription, summarization services, and so forth, right? Amazing, right? So two big questions. One is back to the infrastructure and power and all of that stuff, where is bigger really better in AI? But the larger question is about integrating AI so deeply into WebEx is just a recipe for constant surveillance of employees. And I was talking about the JP Morgan CEO, Jamie Dimon's narrative around, people should be at work and, you're not working hard. You're actually distracted. You're not giving a lot of focus in what you should be doing when you're working remote and all of that stuff. Now with AI powered surveillance also in the mix, how does that really change the way we view the workplace? It's a big question. Now, by the way, wait, are people still using WebEx? Anyways, China's Baidu challenges OpenAI with open sourcing plans. Now, Baidu revealed their plans to open source its next generation model, Ernie, by mid-2025. And Ernie Bot will be available to everybody starting January or starting April, I guess. And this positions Baidu as a key player in the global open source race, open source AI race, and competing directly with the DeepSeeks of the world and Meta of the world and OpenAI. OpenAI is not open source. The big question here is Baidu playing the role that Meta plays in the United States, but being the open source AI guardian and who was promoting innovation as a hedge against closed source models like OpenAI. It'd be very interesting to watch and how they use this as a lever to the open source AI that's now dominated by Meta. It'll be especially interesting to watch how this plays out, given where we are in a geopolitical situation with US, Russia, China, and the new changing world order, whether there is value in mirroring what happens in the United States with an open source player, a core source player, and whether that can be done in China and so forth. So it's going to be an exciting thing to watch, but I thought that was an interesting thing that caught my eye. And the last topic here is global AI policy discussions intensify. So the United Kingdom Treasury Committee launched an inquiry into the impact of AI on financial services, specifically focused on consumer protection and industry competitiveness. Now, there's also several other regulatory frameworks emerging across EU. There's EU wanting to work with the US on it, and there's a growing body of efforts on challenging things like misinformation, data privacy, consumer protection, equitable access, and so forth. But boy, what bad timing! The AI summit hosted by President Macron, Prime Minister Modi, in France a couple of weeks ago, JD Vance issued. If you haven't seen that speech, it is a brilliant speech that JD Vance, the Vice President of the United States, stepped up his narrative around how United States is going to lead the AI revolution or the AI market around the world globally. And it's just bad optics. One of the things JD Vance called out was how Europe and the European countries were killing and stifling innovation by thinking about AI safety. I think there's this famous line he says, "I'm not here to talk about AI safety. I'm here to talk about AI opportunity." And so if you haven't watched that, please watch that particular speech as well. It's a 14-minute speech or something. It's very good. And then, but seriously, the timing of this announcement and the timing of this happening in the UK, when everybody's blaming of European non-competitiveness in AI by using innovation as a way to regulation as a way to stifle innovation, it's just bad optics at this time. I don't know whether they'll actually get the intended output out of this, especially from a public support and other perspectives. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next week on the top 5 stories in AI. And in the meanwhile, subscribe to the channel. You can find us on any of the podcasting platforms like Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Music. Until then, ciao.